This is an AR-15, and this is what it sounds like shooting 55 grain, full metal jacket, M193 clone ammunition. And this is what it sounds when using a suppressor. This is a suppressor, also referred to as a silencer, a can, or a freedom popsicle. And its initial concept was created over 115 years ago. The invention of an MIT graduate who liked racing turn-of-the-century automobiles and a hobbyist recreational shooter, but disliked the loud noises that came from doing both. So he put his engineering mind to work and created what we know today as the automobile muffler and the firearm silencer. In today's video, I'm going to cover an abridged history of Hiram Percy Maxim and his invention, how it influenced the world of firearms, the laws that restrict it, and current legislative actions happening in 2026 that might make this a more commonplace item. Stick around for a range demonstration and a visit to Hiram Percy Maxim's final resting place as I curate to you the sound of silencers. On September 2nd, 1869 in Brooklyn, New York, Hiram Percy Maxim was destined for innovation and design. Percy was the son of Sir Hiram Stevens Maxim, the inventor of the Maxim machine gun, and nephew to Hudson Maxim, a firearms propellant and high explosive pioneer. Percy graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, at just 17 years of age, making him the youngest member in his graduating class, receiving his 2-year degree in mechanical arts in 1886. His engineering degree led him to the American Projectile Company in Lynn, Massachusetts, as a superintendent in 1890. 5 years later, in 1895, he began working for the Pope Manufacturing Company, where he worked on designing, building, and racing internal combustion engines, aka gasoline automobiles, with several patents of his own. But Percy had a problem with the noise, and not just from the vehicles that he was designing and racing, but also from firearms that he shot for recreation, for hunting, and while assisting his father in showcasing the Maxim machine gun. Thus, he went to work on developing what would become the muffler for his internal combustion engines and the silencer for firearms. The design principle was inspired by the swirling water of a draining bathtub, creating a vortex and directional flow of fluids. Maxim realized he could adapt this to the redirection and slowing of high-pressure gases in the same way. He began developing his silencers around 1902, with his breakthrough coming in with his patented Maxim silencer model 1910 on March 30th, 1909. His next silencer would use an off-center design with the baffles below the bore line so that it wouldn't block the iron sights of the common period rifles. This below-the-bore design still allows the gases to be directed through curved vanes, allowing the vortexes to form, cooling and expanding the gases slowly, reducing the loud report. It was marketed as a noise-reducing device that also reduced felt recoil and mitigated muzzle flash. He even sold matching subsonic ammunition for certain calibers. Percy marketed his Maxim silencers through sporting goods magazines. They were affordable and mail-order friendly, with even the recent US President Theodore Roosevelt using one in his 1894 Winchester to quietly hunt varmints around his home. Percy, having worked on inventing gasoline engines, automobile mufflers, and the firearms silencer, also went on to co-found the American Radio Relay League in 1914, where he helped to pioneer amateur radio while also dabbling in astrology. In early February 1936, Percy left his home in Hartford, Connecticut to travel by train to the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona. During the trip, Percy developed an infection in his throat. On February 16th, Percy was admitted to a hospital in La Junta, Colorado. The next day, on February 17th, 1936, Hiram Percy Maxim passed. He was laid to rest at the Rose Hill Cemetery in Hagerstown, Maryland, soon followed by his wife Josephine Hamilton Maxim on February 28th. They both rest at the Hamilton Crypt in Section K, Crypt Plot number 75 in the expansive 102 acres of the cemetery, along with the 43,000 other souls. Rose Hill Cemetery is located at 600 South Potomac Street in Hagerstown, Maryland, if you would like to visit and pay your respects. When a gun fires, propellant gases rapidly expand and travel down and out the barrel, pushing the bullet at supersonic speeds. This creates a massive pressure wave of hot gases. A suppressor provides expansion chambers and baffles to allow those gases to expand, cool, and slow down in a contained space, to then exit after a short amount of time, thus reducing the temperature difference of the hot gases to the outside atmospheric temperature and reducing the velocity of the traveling gases. Suppressors can also reduce muzzle flash and can lessen both felt recoil and muzzle rise. Suppressors do not make guns silent like in the movies. It only lowers the audible sound by roughly 20 to 40 decibels, depending on their design, the caliber being used, and the ammunition being used. Modern manufacturing processes like additive manufacturing, think of industrial grade 3D printing, precision multi-axis CNC machining, and material sciences now enable complex monolithic cores, lattice baffles, and flow-through geometrics that not only reduce the weight of the suppressor, but also reduce the amount of back pressure flow, mainly in semi-automatic systems, while continuing to improve the sound suppression. Some of these modern design cans can be that of the Silencer Co., the Hux Works, and the Strategic Sciences. An important side note to this: a suppressor quiets the muzzle blast, but does not have any effect on the supersonic crack of the bullet leaving the barrel. To eliminate the supersonic crack of the bullet, you would have to use subsonic ammunition and some specific loadings for calibers such as .22 long rifle, 9mm with 147 grain heavy subsonics, roughly standard velocity 45 ACPs, 300 blackouts, 86 blackouts, and 338 arcs. Pairing a modern suppressor with subsonic ammunition will allow you to get as close as possible to Hollywood quiet while still allowing physics to do its job. You'll get a soft mechanical thwack rather than a loud, sharp bang. In the early 1900s, at its conception and design, its popularity was mainly for sport shooting and hunting. The design and application intrigued the U.S. Ordnance Corps as they tested Maxim's first silencer. A Colonel S.E. Blunt, the commanding officer of the Springfield Armory, reported that the silencer eliminated approximately 66% of the noise and 67% of the felt recoil when the rifles were fired. The Maxim Silencer Company developed the model 1912 and subsequently improved it to the 1915 model, which Maxim christened the government silencer. Encouraged by the early military interest, Maxim envisioned a military silencer being used in roles such as sniping, guard harassment, and marksmanship training. He believed that the increasing number of inexperienced shooters from all walks of life joining the U.S. military would struggle to master the .30-06 calibered M1903 rifle due to its loud report and recoil. Maxim felt that using his silencer would help prevent recruits from being intimidated by the rifle and to help them develop and learn the fundamentals of marksmanship faster. And here I have a representation of the M1903 Springfield. You will now have a live fire demonstration. And if you have the volume up loud, I suggest you turn it down low. The U.S. Army decided to test a competing design from Robert Moore against Percy Maxim's design. When they compared the two rival designs, there was little difference between them in regards to reduction of sound, recoil, and muzzle flash. In the Springfield Armory's report in July of 1915, it was found that the Robert Moore silencer was more accurate and had a better attachment system, while the Maxim silencer was more durable and could withstand more prolonged rapid fire. The U.S. Army Ordnance Department recommended the purchase of 100 of both silencers to be field trialed and tested, with 2 suppressors being issued per company for use by sharpshooters. While this was not the large-scale contract that Percy Maxim had hoped for, it was an opening into the possibility of military adoption. The U.S. military's first deployment of silencers came in 1916 when General John J. Pershing conducted his expedition into Mexico to capture Pancho Villa. This included a squad of snipers armed with silencers for their 1903 Springfield rifles. However, little is known about their actual field combat use. During the First World War, both Britain and Germany deployed snipers equipped with Maxim suppressors in small numbers, with some American troops being deployed to Europe as well, also equipped with suppressors. Between late 1917 and early 1918, a plan to deploy some 9,000 silencers was developed. Although part of this order was fulfilled before the end of the war, the exact numbers are unknown. After the war, these rifles were offered for sale through the civilian marksmanship program in the 1920s, while others were given to National Guard units for training purposes, and the remainder were declared obsolete by 1925. In World War II, the American Office of Strategic Services Agents, OSS, precursor to the CIA, and British Special Operations Executive Agents, SOE, used suppressed pistols like the American High Standard HDM and the British Welrod. Suppressed M3 grease guns were used later in the war for the American side, as well as British Delisle carbines for covert operations. In Vietnam, the company called Psionics developed a suppressor for both the M14s and the CAR-15s. And Smith & Wesson created the Mark 22 Hush Puppy for U.S. Navy SEALs and MAC-V SOG. The post-Vietnam era brought a quiet but crucial innovation for handguns, the Nielsen device. This finally allowed short recoil handguns the ability to cycle reliably with a suppressor attached, solving a mechanical problem that had limited suppressed pistols for decades. This tech showed up in the SOCOM's HK Mark 23 in the late 1990s. In recent years, the U.S. Marine Corps started fielding thousands of suppressors across combat units after successful testing of said products, citing dramatically improved squad communication and survivability with the implementation of the Infantry Automatic Rifle Program, and in the U.S. Army's Next Generation Squad Weapons Program, which includes suppressors as a standard piece of kit for the rifles. So why aren't suppressors more common? Well, the civilian market for firearms silencers was dealt a severe blow in 1934, with the National Firearms Act being introduced. The introduction of this act was in response to the rise of organized and violent crime by gangsters like John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, Bonnie and Clyde, and Al Capone's increased use of automatic weapons, short-barreled rifles, and sawed-off shotguns. While the use of silencers by gangsters was minimal, they were included in the National Firearms Act, which required a tax payment and registration of the ownership with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, BATFE, or ATF for short. While this was not an outright ban on silencers, the prohibitively expensive $200 tax stamp, approximately $4,900 in today's economy, that was placed on them, and the federal prison sentence that, if found without registered, effectively killed the market. Today, suppressors are still regulated in the United States by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, which oversees the application process, the criminal background check, and the tax stamp collection. To this, through their own publications of the ATF, ownership has continued to grow. In 2010, there was 285,000 registered suppressors. In 2015, there was 900,000 suppressors. And as per 2026 records, January through July, there have been almost 900,000 suppressors registered this year. With the recent growth of suppressor ownership, this can be correlated from the Big Beautiful Bill, or One Big Beautiful Bill Act, signed in January 1st, 2026, which eliminated the $200 federal tax transfer on suppressors. And at the time of the recording, there is a court case, Silencer Shop Foundation versus ATF in the Northern District of Texas, case 625 CV 00056H, is now challenging the registration requirements of the NFA with the now $0 tax collection. With this court case and the removal of the NFA tax requirements from these items, if pursuant, they may only require a standard Form 4473 to purchase in the future. Now, this is all depending on the case rebuttal and the final court rulings, but it is a turn in the right direction to repeal the NFA. I'm here at the range today to do a impromptu sound suppression test on a couple of my own firearms and my own suppressor. And over here we have our 4 firearms that we'll be testing today: 2 300 blackout cartridges, a 5.56 cartridge, and a .308 Winchester cartridge. I have a chronograph set up also to record the velocities to do, again, a debunking myth on do silencers actually decrease the velocity of the projectile when fired. First up will be the PSA 10.5-inch upper bill kit. I will be firing the AAC 125 grain full metal jacket supersonic rounds out of a 10-round magazine. I will be firing 5 rounds unsuppressed and then 5 rounds suppressed, recording the velocity after each shot. All right, first up is the 10.5-inch barrel 300 blackout, unsuppressed. Okay, now that the suppressor has been added, 5 more rounds of 125 grain 300 blackout. Continuing with the test with the PSA 10.5-inch barrel, we have the AAC's 220 grain OTM subsonic ammunition out of a 10-round magazine. Here is the 220 grain subsonic rounds out of the 10.5-inch PSA upper. Okay, the PSA 10.5-inch barrel to 220 grain subsonics with the suppressor. Next up is the Ruger American Gen 2 and 300 blackout, firing the same 125 grain full metal jacket AAC supersonic ammunition out of a 10-round magazine. 5 rounds unsuppressed 125 grain ammunition out of the Ruger American 16-inch barrel. Ruger American 16-inch barrel, 125 grain FMJs, now suppressed. Continuing the test with the Ruger American 16-inch barrel with the AAC 220 grain subsonic OTMs out of a 10-round magazine. Okay, Ruger American 300 blackout, 220 grain subsonic rounds unsuppressed. 5 shots. Okay, the Ruger American 300 blackout now suppressed with 220 grain subsonics. Up next, I have my Bushmaster XM15, firing Federal 223, 5.56, 55 grain M193 clone ammunition. Okay, the Bushmaster 20-inch barrel with M193 clone 55 grain ammunition, unsuppressed. All right, M193 clone ammo, suppressed. Next up for the 20-inch Bushmaster AR is M855 green tip, Lake City surplus. Bushmaster 20-inch AR-15 with M855 green tip ammunition. 5 rounds unsuppressed. M855 green tips suppressed. Next up for the 20-inch Bushmaster AR-15 is AAC 75 grain boat tail hollow point ammunition. 75 grain boat tail hollow point ammunition out of the 20-inch AR-15 Bushmaster. Unsuppressed. 5 rounds. .75 grain boat tail hollow points suppressed. Last up for the AR-15 Bushmaster is AAC's 77 grain Match Kings. 77 grain Sierra Match Kings out of the 20-inch AR, unsuppressed. .77 grain Sierra Match Kings out of the 20-inch AR, suppressed. The last rifle used in this testing will be a Ruger SR762 .308 Winchester with a 16-inch barrel, firing 150 grain full metal jacket, Lake City ammunition. Ruger SR762 16-inch barrel, firing 150 grain full metal jacket, Lake City ammunition, 5 rounds, unsuppressed. Ruger SR762 150 grain full metal jacket, Lake City's suppressed. Last up for the testing today with the SR762 and 308 is Wolf Poly Performance 145 grain full metal jackets. Ruger SR762 firing 145 grain full metal jacket Wolf Poly Performance ammunition. 5 rounds unsuppressed. Wolf Poly Performance 145 grain full metal jackets suppressed. 5 rounds. What started as one engineer's practical solution to noise reduction has given the world both the automobile muffler and the firearm silencer. Then, for 90 years, the National Firearm Act's tax stamp and registration requirements kept these devices out of reach for most common ordinary shooters. Now, in 2026, the legislative landscape has finally begun to change in a meaningful way. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act eliminated the federal tax and has allowed litigation to challenge the registration requirements. A suppressor will never make a firearm truly silent the way Hollywood portrays them. But the correct pairing of a suppressor and the right ammunition can come pretty close, turning a sharp crack into a soft thwack to assist in protecting your hearing and the hearing of those around you. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this obscure slice of hidden history, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, all those YouTube things, and drop a comment below with any details I may have missed. With that, thanks for watching. As always, stay curious.